Well, I'm sure that you guys are aware of the movie that Lake Bell made a couple of years ago about the voiceover world. It was a regular film. I forget what it was called. Oh God, just look up Lake Bell and you'll find this movie, and it's worth watching. If anybody who has any questions about the voiceover world.
And there's a lot of kind of behind the scenes stuff. There's one just dealing with cartoons and animation and building a studio. There's a film about Walt Disney before there was Mickey.
Mm-hmm.
And
Sure.
I've seen that, and it's amazing what he and others like him have gone through. And this is back way before Disney ever happened. The company had, it goes right up to when he started Steamboat Willie and Mickey Mouse and discovering that character for himself. It's not a documentary, it's a movie, and there are some kind of fictional elements, but it's based on truth. It's
Oh,
based
is that the one that came out a couple of years ago with Tom Hanks as Disney? Was it Tom Hanks?
No, it wasn't Tom Hanks. It was somebody else. I can't remember, but it's on Netflix. We found it on Netflix.
Yeah.
Disney before Mickey or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, you know the one I'm talking about.
Yeah, you show it to me.
I know the one.
Yeah.
I think Emma Thompson was in it.
I think so. There's some really good people in there. But from that side of it, an artist and having this dream of building these stories and creating these stories and being constrained by other people who only want certain things. And that's one of the things that a lot of writers have now with big studios, and they want to do these great stories, but the studios either want to completely change it or they don't want to even take a chance on it because they don't understand it.
Right.
Science fiction, anything with science fiction has a huge problem with that, because the big studios, they're like, no, we don't understand sci-fi, get it away from us. Now, some of them are really bad about that, and some of them have actually done really well with science fiction, and that's why a lot of times you'll see a lot of independent films coming out. I've been kind of poking around through a lot of independent science fiction, whether it's live action, CGI, or a combination of both. There's some really good ones out there, and I've tried to feature some of them on the page.
Yes.
And there, and there's some great stories out there that deserve to be told.
Sure there are. My former assistant, well, he's actually still my assistant. He just moved out of Hollywood and he's doing it long distance. But he's a horror movie nut. I mean, a nut. That's his whole life. He's in his late 50s, and he's a walking encyclopedia of horror movies, going back to the silent era and straight through. And he has created a script. He had somebody write it for him. And when he first told me the synopsis, which was 7 or 8 years ago, I'm not a horror movie nut myself, but it was such an unusual idea. And I said, oh my God, you've got to register that with the Writers Guild right now, and you've got to turn this into a script. And he did. And it's a good script, and it's a good story. You think anybody's willing to pick it up and run with it and produce it? He's just fed up with the whole scenario that nobody wants it. And I'm telling you, from a professional point of view, it's a very, very doable script. And it would be a big budget movie.
Yeah.
But you multiply that times thousands and thousands of people out there who are creative, they're talented, and they have ideas that are viable, but they don't know where to start. They don't know who to contact. This goes on all the time. Yeah. I used to, for some reason, I don't know where this got started, but years ago, somehow I appeared as a literary agency, and I've never been a literary agency. And I started getting submission after submission from total strangers, and most of them would give me the synopses of their stories. And this was for books and screenplays. And I didn't have time to look at them, but I always felt compelled. I have a compulsion to answer those kinds of submissions, just to say, I'm sorry, I can't help you. I don't feel that way about actors because there are way too many of them and they should know better. But sometimes I would take the time to read some of the synopses, and it was like, oh my God, this is a great idea. Don't give it away. Stop telling it to complete strangers like me.
Mm-hmm.
Because they don't know how to protect themselves. They don't know what they need to protect. Actors don't have this problem. This is a different kind of problem. But the creative end of things, it's really tough to get into it.
Yeah, and a lot of times, unless you have a well-known big name attached to either yourself or your project, it's really hard. And it's not only is it really it's not fair to a lot of these creative people that have such great stories, but it's unfortunately the truth. It's unless there's a big name like Ron Howard or Peter Jackson or Michael Bay or even Wally Burr, it's unless there's a big well-known name, well-established name attached to it, it's almost like you can't get anywhere. But that's not to say that anybody should give up on it, because increasingly, not only are there independent films out there, and there's film festivals all over the world that will show them.
Yes.
There are increasingly studios, small studios, that are like, let's do it here.
Mm-hmm.
They have a studio space and they'll rent it out and they'll say, hey, let's do it here. And you approach people like that and say, hey, I want to get this done. You can get a lot more headway that way with the smaller studios.
Well, there's also the aspect of crowdfunding.
Yes.
That has really come into play.
Yes. A lot of independent films that are more than just little shorts.
Yep.
A lot of these independent films have gone through crowdfunding and have done very, very well. Some of them started out as fan film productions that have gone completely in their own direction and are no longer fan films. They're completely independent, original pieces now.
But I would imagine it's a lot easier to do that live action than to do that animation. You need such a tremendous crew to do animated work, and it's different. It's so time consuming.
And yes and no on that, because I actually know a gal who back in 2003 proved that one person with 3 computers can do a animated film for like a half-an-hour episode.
Yeah.
All on their own, and did it. It's called Kaze Ghost Warrior. You look it up. Timothy Albee, who's now Amadia and is a singer, transgendered, when he did this, he released it in 2004. I actually met him in 2004 at a convention, and I have a copy of the DVD, the original DVD.
And he did it from home? He just did it himself?
Yes. 3 computers and himself. And you look at the credits, and it's like his name on just about everything. He had a couple of producers and I think 1 or 2 other people that were helping him with getting it out there, but he pretty much did it all himself, even the voice work.
Mm-hmm.
And so it doesn't necessarily take a huge studio even to do CGI animation, because one man did a half-hour episode by himself with 3 computers.
Well, we have friends in Shreveport, Louisiana. The woman, whose name is Sharon Tout-Laborde, is an animator. She just graduated from whatever the university is in Shreveport, studying animation, and she has created all by herself I think it's a half-hour or 20-minute short that is beautifully done. She did it completely by herself, and she and her boyfriend, Darren Broussard, did some of the voices. They got 1 or 2 other people to do the voices, but Wally helped them. Wally participated by giving them notes, I'm not even sure what exactly he did, but I know he was on the phone with them all the time for months and months, helping them out.
Yeah.
But he's known them. He met them at a convention years ago. And they've become friends. They have visited us here. They came 3 months ago just to see Wally. They spent the money just to come and see Wally in the hospital.
Wow.
So, but all these connections that people make can lead somewhere. You never know where they're going to lead. Not for every single person, of course.
Oh, of course.
But
and you never know who you're going to run into going wherever, even just day-to-day stuff. I mean, I ran into, you know who Vivica, I'm not sure if you know who Vivica Davis is. The original V miniseries, there was a family that was principal in it. The older daughter ended up pregnant. Well, the younger daughter, the gal who plays her younger sister, that's Vivica Davis. She ended up, she was in Tom Hanks' film where he ended up on an island, stranded.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. She was on the aircraft that went down.
Uh-huh.
So she was in that. I ended up running into her brother at a store right across the street from where I live, randomly.
Yes.
Day.
Yes.
Actually, he invited me over to this coffee shop to sit and talk with her, and myself and about a dozen other people were invited to come and talk to her, and we sat for like 2 hours chatting with her. So you never know who you run into just randomly.
Oh, of course.
You know, every day, let alone at a convention, and the connections that you make that just may put things forward so that you can get your dream to happen.
That's right.
Don't take anything for granted.
Oh, I agree with you. Even if what you want out of life is simply to meet one of your heroes.
Exactly.
If that's the only reason you go to one of these conventions, and I know they're held all over the world now,
yes,
go, have fun. It's a highlight of a lot of people's lives.
Oh, yeah.
And I understand it.
Friend who, she found out about Transformers with the first movie in 2007. She wasn't into Transformers, but she was into big rig trucks and had been since she was a little kid. She saw the commercial for it, and she saw this gorgeous red and blue flame conventional truck that turned into this 28-foot robot. And she went, oh my goodness. I fell in love with it. And she was in a very bad situation at the time, a very abusive relationship. 6-8 months after she saw that movie, hearing Optimus Prime's voice in her head, freedom is the right of all sentient beings, that voice, that saying, gave her the strength to stand up and say no more. And got rid of that relationship, and she's doing so much better now. And she went to BotCon a couple of years ago and actually got to meet Peter Cullen. And she drawn a couple of pictures and wrote her a letter telling her story. But she didn't know if she was even going to get to meet him because it was so limited, and it was kind of a lottery drawing as to who would be able to get something signed by him. So a couple of friends of hers went to the meet and greet that was on Friday night, and he was there, and they gave him the envelope that had the drawings of her letter. There was signing the next day. Well, half the people that were picked didn't even show up for the signing. So her and her two friends were there, and he recognized the two of them. One of them pointed to her, indicating the letter was from her.
Yeah.
And after the last person that went up there, a young girl, after she had gone through, he motioned for her to come over, even though she did not get chosen for it.
Yes.
And for her to approach, and sat there for a few minutes talking to her. Got a couple of pictures with her, signed a couple of things, and she started crying. And he's like, don't cry, you're going to make me cry. It was so cute. And Optimus Prime, those words gave her the strength to stand up for herself and say no more and get out of an abusive relationship. And the man who brought that character to life, going back to the voice actors, a lot of people who don't understand cartoons and don't understand why people are into them like a lot of us are, there's a reason for that. A lot of these characters, because of the people who brought them to life, have become heroes to us, like on Prime. A lot of that has to do not only with the actor and what they did, like what Peter Cullen did with the original cartoon, but also with voice directors like Wally Burr, who got them to push their abilities further and bring out a truly phenomenal performance.
Yes.
So part of it's the animators, part of it is the writers, the director, and the actor. It's like a whole village to do this, to create these characters and make them come to life. Actors, these people who have given voice and heart and soul to these characters, they're heroes to us. Their name is synonymous with these characters. And people who they boo-hoo it, they don't understand that. It's like, did you ever have a hero growing up when you were a kid? Maybe somebody who played baseball or football, a quarterback in football was a hero of yours. Was there ever somebody you ever looked up to? This is no different.
And well, there's also, that I understand from the types of cartoons that we're talking about, the Transformers and the G.I. Joes. I have a foster son that I met when he was 10 years old. He's now 43. He's got learning disabilities, among other problems that he's got. But when I first met him at the age of 10, all he wanted was to be a soldier man. An army man. He said an army man. And he wanted G.I. Joe toys. Now, that was 33 years ago. And he was obsessed with becoming an army guy until he was well into his 20s. And because he's got these mental problems, he never could. But he still talks about it even now. Now he kind of jokes about, this obsession that he used to have. Yeah. But that was something that just penetrated his brain. I knew nothing about it in those days. That was long before I knew Wally or had any interest whatsoever in any of these things. But what I grew up on was cartoons that made me feel good. I grew up with Peter Pan and Cinderella and Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs and Donald Duck and Mickey Mouse, all of those type of things that were basically happy. And if you went to see one of those cartoon festivals or a movie with those characters, you came out happy. Mm-hmm. I don't know if anybody comes out happy after a G.I. Joe or a Transformers. I'm not into that. Right. But it's got to be a different feeling. And I think, personally, I think that the children of today need happy more than they need violent.
Right. A lot of the, like with Transformers and G.I. Joe, it's good versus evil and good prevails.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of, the heroes push back from a child of the 70s and 80s, as I am. These cartoons were during a time in my life where dealing with bullies and people that are very hateful and all, these characters, these heroes, kind of presented that here's these guys and they're fighting against these bullies that are trying to hurt other people and they're stopping them from doing that.
Yes.
Like with Transformers, when you had kids that have dealt with doctors who they only care about their bottom line, or therapists who their only answer to anything is medication and hospitalization, and then see a character like Ratchet who genuinely cares about the people that he's helping, the other Transformers, it's like, now that's the kind of doctor I want to see. Somebody who actually cares about me and my health and my well-being, and not about what he can get from me for doing what he does. That kind of thing. And some of the characters become like uncles or fathers or big brothers or, that kind of thing. And it's that connection that a lot of these kids have with characters like in Transformers and G.I. Joe and He-Man.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I was an only child. I didn't have brothers and sisters or uncles and aunts. I had nobody but my parents and me. And those cartoon characters that I loved, which were akin to the kind of books that I loved. Well, not really. I mean, I like more grown-up books, but I fantasized about those characters being real. I had a major crush on Peter Pan. I was in love with Peter Pan. And to me, he was alive.
Understandably so.
And I wanted to hang out with Mickey and Donald and have fun with them, and they were alive to me.
Yeah. Any other cartoon that kids fall in love with and grow up with, that same type of thing. They feel alive, and they become part of our lives. I mean, for me, Transformers came out during a time I was living in Boise, Idaho, and a lot of the Transformers stories took place somewhere in Washington. They actually mentioned specifically Tacoma, Washington, 3 different times in the series.
Really?
And, yeah, Mount St. Hilary, which is where the Autobot ship crash landed and where the base is, that's Mount St. Helens.
Oh, well.
And so it's like I'm watching this cartoon, and here the Autobots are protecting my home until I get back to it. You know, in my way of thinking. It's like I could still see parts of my home where I started from. And then coming back here, it's like, yep, we're good.
Thanks to the Transformers.
Exactly. And being a kid and growing up with that, that's how it felt.
Well, you know, that's a very good point of view that I would never have had if you hadn't said what you've just said. I don't think of it that way. I don't think of it at all.
You can understand after me telling you that, you can now kind of see where a lot of that comes from with the way the fans respond to it.
Yeah, because I never understand it. I've never been to these conventions because I really don't like crowds. Yeah. But just the numbers alone, the sheer numbers alone, and the stories I hear from certain people I know who go to those conventions, it's, oh my God, how can you stand it? And why do you do it? And what are you getting out of it? And you've told me more in the last 10 minutes than any of them has in all the time we've been talking about it put together.
Well, I'm glad to be of help.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Kat.
No problem at all. It's one of the main reasons we go to these conventions, is not only to meet some of our heroes who have voiced these characters and brought them to life, or even screen actors who have brought these characters to life, but also to meet up with other people who love it just as much as we do, and to connect with other people and see even all the different things that have come out of it. Hearing these stories and having somewhere where other people understand, they get it.
Yeah.
And it's that connection, that community that these conventions create with all these fans. There was a video that I had featured on Nostalgiaverse earlier this year. Will Wheaton, who played Wesley Crusher on Star Trek Next Generation.
Yeah.
He was at a convention, and this little girl asked him, were you bullied when you were growing up, and what did you do about it? What he said to her was absolutely phenomenal. He's like, these people, they do this to you because they're not happy with their life. And the kindest thing you could do is to pity them. It does absolutely get better. And there's several thousand people here. I think it was like 10,000 or something. There's 10,000 people here. And we're all doing very well. And he got applause. And his whole speech, and it's on YouTube, you can find it on there. Will Wheaton responds to a girl's question about bullying, being bullied. Really easy to find. What he said to her was great. That kind of connection, that kind of community and support that people find at these conventions with each other, meeting these celebrities, but meeting each other. People who come from completely different walks of life, who've met, fell in love, and got married at conventions.
Well, it's
met before.
It's a form of religion, if you think about it.
In a way.
Why do people go to church? They go to church to meet other people who want to go to that church and to become involved with a society that believes in the same things they believe in. Well, that's what you're describing.
Essentially, yeah. I mean, it's not religious in nature, it's cultural.
No, I know that.
But it's a similar type of thing. It's a community, and it's a gathering of members of that community. And you spend a weekend having fun, and you learn more from each other about things that maybe you may not have thought about before with this character or that story, or insight on different things, or you find out about new series or new stories that you may not have heard of before or hadn't seen, that kind of bypassed you for whatever reason, and then you go looking for it, and you discover new stories, new fandoms to become involved with. I mean, there are people who've never heard of Firefly, And then they go to a convention and they see all these people who refer to themselves as browncoats. These are Firefly fans. And they're like, what's this Firefly thing? And they're like, oh, you need to, yeah. And they show it to them. They're like, oh my God, this is so awesome. And it's all kinds of things like that. So it's not just, again, like Transformers is, nothing but Transformers. There's other things too. Because things that relate to Transformers, anything to do with robots and artificial intelligence, and it all goes back to Isaac Asimov.
To what?
Isaac Asimov, the author.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And you start learning about the history of science fiction as well, and where a lot of this comes from. The classic authors and those old, the silent films that were, science fiction, and into the talkies, as they called them back in the day.
Well, all right. So let me ask you something.
Okay.
If you're concentrating on science fiction, was there room in your psyche for period pieces, for westerns, for the Count of Monte Cristos, for things like that, Cowboys and Indians? Or was it, why science fiction as opposed to the past?
Science fiction is, now for me, I've been into everything from period pieces to historical fiction to westerns. I grew up watching things like Gunsmoke and all kinds of stuff, Zorro, all kinds of things. But science fiction, I always come back to science fiction because it is, while we know about the past and we can speculate on different things of the past and we can go into plausible stories or possible scenarios from the past, but it's all in the past. Science fiction is the future, in particular, hope for the future. That's why Star Trek has been going so strong for 50 years. It's hope, looking forward with hope. And that's what science fiction represents to a lot of people.
You're a very smart cookie, lady. You're really interesting to talk to.
Thank you very much. I'm actually a second-generation sci-fi fan and Trekker. My mother grew up watching the original series of Star Trek, along with War of the Worlds, Day the Earth Stood Still, Time Machine, that kind of thing. And my father read all of the classics, E. Doc Smith, Isaac Asimov, a lot of the classic authors. So I grew up with it and watching things like Buck Rogers' 25th Century, Battlestar Galactica, Knight Rider, and even some of the more noir or darker type things like Max Headroom, VR5.
Whatever happened to that show? I love that show.
I know, right?
In fact, whatever happened to that actor?
I'm not entirely sure. I'd have to look that one up.
He went on. I mean, he continued having more normal roles. I can't even remember his name, but I just love that show.
Well, he was in Orphan Black on the BBC, and he played an evil doctor and got killed off. But yeah, that's
what was his name? Do you remember?
Frewer.
Yes, Matt Frewer. Matt Frewer. That's right.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, and I remember the Coca-Cola commercials with Max Headroom.
Yes, I do too. I do too.
And then other shows that were a little bit more upbeat, like Alien Nation. I love that show. You know how many people are like, alien what? You got 250,000 aliens that are former slaves crash on Earth, and then 5 years later, after going through quarantine, they're now part of the city of Los Angeles, and one of them becomes a police detective, and has a human partner.
Huh.
And it started as a movie and became a 22-episode series that was canceled on a cliffhanger. And then they resolved the cliffhanger in the first of 5 television movies that they produced after the series ended, after only 22 episodes. And I've got like the whole thing. It's a great series. And it touches on a lot of different subjects, from slavery to racism to, and that's another thing that science fiction has always been good with, is touching on current issues and social commentary. That's one thing Star Trek was well known for. People can relate to that and look at it through the lens of science fiction, and see it from a different point of view rather than from their own point of view. And that's another thing that science fiction has been able to do and do well.
Funny, speaking of Star Trek, I don't think anybody that I know of maybe they've done it and I'm just not aware of it, has made an issue, a good issue, out of the fact that the cast of Star Trek, going back to what, the 1960s it started? Is that when it started? Was always integrated, completely integrated.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody ever talks about that. They talk about other shows that, oh, this is the first time, when Bill Cosby did I Spy, it was the first time they had an integrated pair of heroes, and they had other shows. But nobody ever makes that comment about Star Trek.
Star Trek was the forerunner. Gene Roddenberry felt that to create an inclusive crew, you had this guy as captain, but helm and navigation was a Russian kid and a Japanese guy. You had a black woman as their communications officer. She was head of communications. You had a half alien that was the science officer and second in command of the whole ship. You had a Scotsman for an engineer.
Yep.
And it was all inclusive. In fact, Nichelle Nichols, who played Uhura, talks about she was going to leave the show. And she ended up meeting Martin Luther King, and he said, oh, no, you can't leave. You don't understand what you have done. What you are doing in this role is giving hope and giving a role model for not just black people, but young black women in particular.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an astronaut, black lady, that she became an astronaut because of Uhura.
Wow.
Yeah. So Star Trek was the forerunner for all of that. I mean, your first interracial kiss on TV ever was between Kirk and Uhura.
It was? I missed that one.
Yeah.
I didn't know they had a thing going.
Well, it was forced because of what was going on. Can't remember the name of the episode, but there was a society that was kind of patterned off of ancient Greece, and they had telepathic abilities.
Yeah.
And telekinetic abilities, and they had captured some of the crew and wouldn't let them leave, and they were forcing them to act out these scenarios, and that's how that kiss happened in the story.
Oh, yeah. That was in season 2, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. I'm pretty sure it was. And it was a great episode. The series itself touched on a lot of social issues. There was one episode where I think it's called Our Last Battlefield, where you had two guys that one half was black, the other half was white. And I mean actual black.
I remember that.
And
I remember.
the reverse of each other.
Yep.
One was black on the left, the other one was white on the left. And there was this hatred between the two of them because of that difference. And they were the last of their race, and they died basically killing each other.
Oh.
Because they could not get past their own hatred.
Yeah.
And that's a commentary regarding racism and the arbitrary nature of racism and how ridiculous it is. And it kind of shows that in these two characters. And the rest of the cast, the rest of the characters, the main characters, are looking at this like, this is ridiculous. What? I don't see, there's no difference between you two. What is, well, he's this color on the left. It's like, so?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, and it's like, so he's a little bit different. I mean, look at us. Like I said, science fiction.
You can do things with science fiction because it is fiction and it is futuristic for the most part that you cannot do with the past. You cannot do with realism. But anyway, so that is another aspect of science fiction that I'm sure appeals to a certain part of our brains, that you can mold it